Hey guys, this is the Newman Hour. I'm your host, Tory Newman. This is episode 6. I missed an upload for the first week. I didn't like how it came out, and to be honest, I'm glad I didn't post it because after watching these past weekend games, I was off on a lot of things, so nobody knows about it. It was never posted online, so nobody knows it except for me, who has that recording still. And honestly, I'm just going to chalk it up as my Raiders had a bye week, so this will be my bye week. I really want this to be the only time that I miss an upload because I really want to be consistent with this show to really try to get it off the ground. But yeah, in this episode, we'll be recapping the games from this past weekend. And the next episode, we should be previewing the games for this upcoming weekend. So I got my water, got my Bob's Burgers playing in the background. Let's get into it. Before we recap the games, I'd like to go into general topics that are just going around the league right now. Top 4 things that really are on my mind. One of the things was the Cowboys calling out their coaching staff, which is weird. It seemed like I saw reports that the defensive players were calling out their coaching, saying that they're just out of touch, that they weren't scheming them up well. And if you watch the game this past Monday against the Cardinals, you could see why they would be saying that. It seems like the Dallas defense has talent more than, say, the worst defensive teams out there, but they're just playing terribly. They're just flat out getting beat. Kyler Murray only completed 9 passes, but they won by 18? It was bad. I think it was actually 28. It was 38-28. Yeah, it was a bad game. So something's got to change, and they haven't shown it to been able to stop anybody this year. So who knows? Maybe getting rid of the defensive coordinator would be a good thing. They can't play much worse than they already have. So that's I thought that was interesting. I've never really seen players publicly call out coaches like that. So we'll see if anything changes. Gotta stay tuned for that. Another thing in the news is Tua was named the starter this past Monday for the rest of the season, it looks like, or at least for this upcoming game. But I mean, I don't see why they would change back. But yeah, Tua, I'm not going to try to say his last name. High draft pick. I believe it was the 6th, or I think it was before Justin Herbert, so he's the 4th pick in this past draft from Alabama. Roll Tide. So he'll be making his first start next week. They have a bye week this week. But his next start will be against the Rams. Or his first start will be against the Rams. And that's welcome to the NFL, Tua. Something that came out today that was interesting regarding the Dolphins was Fitz. Fitz has been a fan favorite for pretty much every team that he goes to. He's just a lovable guy. It's kind of funny being a fan of one of the teams that he was not on. As a Raider fan, it feels like he beat us every time, no matter what team he was on, whether it was the Bills, the Bucks, the Titans. It really didn't matter. He just balled out against us. We were just one of those teams. But nonetheless, he's in the news today because he was in an interview with a reporter talking about Tua taking over, and he was saying that he was really hurt, that it hurt his heart all day, that he was heartbroken about it, which was pretty surprising considering he seems like a very team-oriented guy. Like I said, he's a fan favorite. He really just, he's the ultimate teammate, right? So to hear that he's really disappointed, that it kind of blindsided him, isn't it weird that he feels this way? Because didn't he know this was going on? I guess because he was on a mini win streak that they wouldn't take him out. But I completely understand the move. I feel like it's only news because, like I said, he's a fan favorite. So these things happen all the time. He was a high draft pick. He was taken out. I mean, it's not like people were that surprised when Justin Herbert took over for Tyrod. It's kind of the same thing. Journeyman being taken over by the high draft pick, the guy who presumably is the future of the franchise. So I find that it was kind of weird. But it is sad. It does suck because he was playing well. Like I said, they were on a 2-game win streak. I think 3 of the last 4. So they were on the upswing. But this is the way it goes. They got to see what they can get from Tua gets hurt. They have Fitz, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But you got to see what the kids got. You got to see what they can do because it seems like this team is going to do some things, and you want your rookie quarterback to get the experience to try to build off how the team is playing right now. I'm not mad at it. I'm sure a lot of people are, though. One of the things I want to talk about around the league is it feels like if you're watching the games, it feels like the gap between like the best and the worst isn't that bad. I mean, the only clear bad team is the Jets because they're the only team that hasn't won a game yet. And there's a couple others, like pretty much all the NFC East, the Washington football team, the Cowboys, the Giants. I think that's pretty evident that they're not one of the better teams. But even they're the best teams. They don't feel like they're unbeatable like they feel like in past years. Like the Ravens last year, they were killer. It didn't seem like anybody was going to beat them. And the Niners were killers. There's teams that have really good records, but all of them feel like they've shown like a major hole that pretty much every team can take advantage of in some way, shape, or form. Like even the comebacks are happening more often. Granted, they're kind of like bad teams, but even the good teams that are playing right now, like for instance the Ravens, they had a comeback almost happen against them with the Eagles, who are presumably a bad team. The Steelers have shown their first sense of dominance, but they were all their wins, other than the Browns game, have been against weak teams or presumably weak teams. But yeah, there's no real dominant team so far in the first 6 weeks of the season. Maybe one will show out, have a long streak, and dominate for the rest of the season. I mean, the only team that really showed it was the Packers, and they just got demolished by Tampa Bay, who looked worse the week before. So it's going to be interesting. And if if the playoffs go into a bubble, it's going to be kind of like the NBA, where you're going to have these teams that, record-wise and like even history-wise, will do better because they won't be affected by, fans. Everything will be kind of neutral. So it's going to be interesting. Is home field advantage even going to be a thing this year? It hasn't been so far. And it has to do with the next topic I want to talk about, which seems like it's going to be a weekly check-in to see how it goes, is COVID. You see how it's affecting fans not being able to be there, players getting it, personnel getting it. It seems like it's just another thing on top of injuries that we have to account for. And it's just so unpredictable. It's even more unpredictable than injuries, because at least like, if this guy's dealing with pain, it could re-aggravate something. And this whole COVID thing makes no sense. You don't know who's being unsafe, when they're being unsafe, how long they'll be safe. It's just it's such a weird situation. I mean, we've been dealing with it as a people, but like having sports with it on top of everything else that affects it, because there's so many people involved. It can give you a headache just trying to keep track of it all. But let's recap these games from week 6. The teams that were on bye were the Saints, Chargers, Raiders, and the Seahawks. Best team in football. Yeah, of course I forgot them. But yeah, let's recap some games. Some games I'm gonna just as a time management thing, because I tend to ramble. There's some games that I'm gonna go more in depth about, and then some games that are not. That's just my personal preference, just to keep the show rolling smoothly and not just have lulls and ramble. But yeah, to start off the recap, we have the Texans, who traveled to the Titans. Titans were undefeated coming in, undefeated at home so far. They've been kind of up and down, but they really, I think they continue to show in these last few weeks that their offense is the strong point of this team. And if they can get that going early, that they show that they can hold teams, unless they have miraculous games like we saw Deshaun Watson have. But I don't think a lot of teams can do what they did against the Titans that the Texans can do, or what Deshaun Watson can do. So I think the Titans are still a good team, even though they almost came short. They have a strong running game, strong defense. Both lines are good. I know they lost Taylor Lewan, so we'll see how that affects their execution on offense. But overall, they've shown that they're a strong team and that they can win given any situation, whether it's coming back or holding a lead for the entire game. They pretty much play 4 quarters. Following that, we had another comeback, but it actually came through, was the Bengals being taken down by the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts were down 21 points at one point, but they came back pretty quickly. The Colts defense was put in a bad spot. They had a bad turnover by Jack Doyle. They just had really bad field position that they had to go up against early in that game. and the Bengals had it going. As a trend that's been going on that I've noticed is that these rookie quarterbacks haven't had good second halves. Like, they both have had strong first or second quarters. I'm speaking about Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. They both came out hot, but have allowed these good teams to come back, a la the Tampa Bay game that they had a couple weeks ago. The Colts, I don't know how to feel about them. They lost last week against the Browns pretty convincingly, and they almost lost against presumably bad team in the Bengals. I want to say that they're still a good team. We'll see how they do against the Titans, who are their main division foe right now. So we'll see how they do. That should be a very interesting game. I don't know when that game happens. Maybe it's this upcoming week. We'll see in the previews. The Colts are very iffy, and Titans are iffy, but they're 5-0. So they've shown that they can win through adversity. We'll see how the Colts do against better competition, because I don't think they'll be able to do this against, say, a Titans team. We'll see. Next would be the Falcons and Vikings. Vikings losing big, 40-23. Kirk Cousins having ugly interceptions early in that game really cost them. Their defense couldn't stop the Falcons in the first half, allowing 20 points, but the Vikings didn't help them. I think this is just going to be one of those years where the Vikings aren't good. They made the playoffs last year. This is one of those years where they don't make it. They're clearly talented, but just not motivated, not focused. They're just not on point as far as execution. They're a very talented team that's shown, but they can't put 4 quarters together, and that's inevitably what's going to cost them, because I don't see them better as the Lions. I don't see them as better as the Packers and the Bears. So this is just going to be a lost season for the Vikings. Falcons, on the other hand, getting their first win after firing their head coach, Dan Quinn. And they won it for their interim coach. They won it for pride's sake. But I see this team not doing really anything this year. Yes, Matt Ryan had a good game. Julio had a comeback game. But I don't think it'll be enough to come back in this division. You're already behind the Panthers, who everyone thought you'd be better than. And you have the Saints, who have continued to roll, and Tampa Bay looks like they found their groove. Yeah, I think it'll be too much for the Falcons to overcome, and they just don't have the defense to rely on. That you can't rely on offense every single game. Next game was one of the games that really piqued my interest, just the way it played out, because it didn't play out at all what I thought it would. Was the Patriots and Broncos. Broncos taking the Patriots down on the road. So this is the Patriots' second loss in a row, which is rare, and losing at home against a losing team is pretty rare. Drew Lock didn't look good coming back from injury, but who really does look good against this Patriots defense? He's still a young quarterback. He hasn't played a full season yet. I think this might be his 8th game, maybe. So I'm going to cut him some slack. He had some pretty bad interceptions. One, I think, it looked like miscommunication between Tim Patrick, and the second one was just he threw in a double coverage, and the fact that they even called that play in that circumstance, it was like fourth quarter. You guys are trying to preserve a lead. You're lucky he didn't come back to bite you. It didn't look like either turnover did. But that's because the Patriots offense just looked inept, and I don't know how to feel about this game. That's why I had to watch it for a second time. I don't know whether to think the Broncos are coming back and can grind out wins like this, or are the Patriots just had an off game? Cam, his first game back. Their defense played the definition of bend, don't break. They didn't allow a single touchdown, even regardless if they let them down the field from the 25 or if it was off one of the turnovers that Cam had. They did not. They tightened up when they needed to. So that gives me faith in their defense. But then, how good is the Broncos' offense? They were missing Melvin Gordon. They obviously don't have their star receiver in Cortland Sutton. Drew Lock's been out for a little while. I don't know what to feel about this game. I don't see the Broncos really being able to compete with the good teams in the AFC. I have to believe in the Patriots because of the Patriots, and I think Cam Newton can play better than this. I know he can play better than this. I think I might have the Patriots because of Bill Belichick in a higher regard than I should. Early season, I thought they could be like 11-5. But now, just based off this game and uh, how they've shown up these last few games, even with Cam Newton out, they're leaning more towards a 9-7, 10-6 team. But the Bills have shown they're not as good as they were early in the season. So I still think that the Patriots are better than the Bills and will win this division. We'll see if how much they can hang on by their defense and see how much they can win games. Because if they just showed a little offense in this game, they would have had it. So we'll see if Cam can be enough offense, because they don't have enough weapons on their offense for him to lean on, if he can be the main point and stay healthy, most importantly. But yeah, that was one of the games I had to rewatch just to get a good feel of both teams, because I really, off the first, just watching it in real time, I couldn't get a good feel of either team. Next was a snooze fest. Giants, Washington. Giants won. Woo woo. They got the first win against a bad team. So, yeah, Kyle Allen. Daniel Jones. Enough said. The next game was another game that intrigued me, was the Ravens traveling to the Eagles. Eagles, not record-wise a good team, even health-wise are a good team. Carson Wentz has been given in mixed performances week in and week out. He flashes the talent that he clearly has, but is it the play calling? Is it the O-line? Is it him that just can't get on the right track early in games? Because they've just been terrible in both games, or in all their games early. They may get a score on the first possession or something, but other than that, they haven't been able to score in the first half. It seems like they only know when to show up when it's like, oh man, we got to score points. And it seems like they've done that the last couple weeks. But I have no faith in the Eagles. They have talent, they have flashes, but they're way too inconsistent. Their play calling is, I think, sometimes abysmal, and they're not healthy. They have all the tools for having a bad, possibly good season, which will be weird. I can see it, if their O-line gets healthy, like I think I said in a previous episode, they will be fine for that last run, because they have no competition. I just went through the last game, had two of their possibly the worst teams in the NFL. So Eagles will be fine. Ravens, I think, will be fine too. A lot of people were getting on them because they allowed a comeback, but this team is still strong on both sides of the ball. It would take a no turnover, Lamar Jackson absolutely doing nothing, and then even then a team to overcome their defense and being able to hold Lamar Jackson, whatever that means. So they're going to be a good regular season team. It's just a matter of, will they have a lead in a playoff game? Because if they don't, I don't see them coming back. Even if it's like they're down at half, I don't see them scoring enough points when teams know that they have to throw the ball. I don't trust him in those situations yet, and he doesn't look as good as he did last year. So we'll see if they'll be better situationally, because if they are, then that'll put them over the hump, even though it might not record-wise, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I think the Ravens are fine, even if they allowed the Eagles to come back somewhat. Next, we got a blowout in the Steelers and Browns game. Steelers winning 38-7. This was the first dominant performance by the Steelers, but it was really just all their defense. Their offense didn't really need to do much. They were put in great position, and they scored, and they just handled the job. Browns didn't show up at all. Baker was bad, but he was hurt, and he wasn't given any chance. There was a couple of drop passes in this game. He was erring on a lot of throws, but I don't think I'm ready to knock down the Browns just yet. This is a division game. The Steelers know the Browns better than most teams. Yes, this is a bad loss for the Browns, but I think they're still in line and still more than talented enough to beat the other teams in the AFC. So they'll still be a a fairly good team. They're just maybe not as good as people thought. People were ready to crown them as contenders for the division. They're just not there yet. The Steelers and Ravens have too much stability, too much talent, and consistency for the Browns to overcome right now. And that's fine. It's still early in the season. Following that, we have a close game between the Bears and Panthers. Panthers definitely taken a hit after winning 3 in a row, facing a really good Bears defense. Nick Foles did enough to get the win. Their offense is still very inconsistent, and we'll see how they do against a good defense, because Carolina hasn't been really good on defense. It's really been their offense and running game that's been winning them these games. So we'll see how the Bears can... Will this be one of those years where they never win pretty? They've never been a team to be a prolific offense. So I guess it's just going to be another one of those years where their defense pretty much carries them, and Foles will be in control of this offense to get them enough wins. Do I think he'll have enough to have magic in the playoffs? No, because he'll probably get hurt by then. It's too early, and there's too much season left. Unless he gets like a minor injury that puts him out for like a month, Mitchell Trubisky holds them over, and then he comes back in the playoffs. Okay, that'll be interesting. But if he's just playing the rest of the year, even if they do go to the playoffs, I don't think his magic will just randomly turn on. I feel like there has to be that element of surprise and teams not getting enough time to prep for him to really have that Foles magic. But anyways, I think the Bears will be. I think their defense is too good not to be above 500, so they'll be in the wild card hunt. But even though the Packers lost badly to the Tampa Bay game, which I will go into, I don't think they're better than the Bears. I mean, I don't think they're worse than the Bears. The Bears historically haven't been good against the Packers, and I don't see that changing because Nick Foles is the quarterback instead of Mitchell Trubisky. Following that game, we have the Lions and Jags. Lions coming off a bye. I think they're a better coached team. I don't know if they're a better team than the Jags. They might have more talented, more like noteworthy names on the Lions, but I just think that coming off a bye, being a slightly better coached team, and the Jags have just been inept for the last couple weeks after that big win in the week 1. People really ready to hop on the bandwagon, like, okay, maybe the Jags aren't as bad as we thought. No, they're as bad as we thought. They're not coached well enough. They're not talented enough to compete right now. I still believe in Gardner Minshew, but he's not getting any help from his coaching staff as far as play calling. Offensive line isn't that strong. Running game hasn't been that strong. So we'll see. I think a younger quarterback with less experience is going to take them farther with the same thing? I don't think so. I think the coaching staff has to change, and to really give Gardner a chance, because they didn't go into this offseason trying to build around him. No, they just were trying to figure out their answer, and they're like, I guess Gardner will be our placeholder for now. No, I think he deserves a real chance. He's shown enough to know that he can win in this league. We'll see how the season plays out. They're just not enough to do anything this year. He's put in a bad spot. And as I mentioned earlier, the Dolphins have made a switch to starting quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, who won this past week against the Jets. They won 24-0. Jets didn't show up. Gase still has a job. The world doesn't make sense, but it's 2 a time. We'll see how it goes. I can't wait to preview that game against the Rams next week because they have a bye this week. Yeah, the Dolphins dominated. Gaskin was good on the ground. Fitz made throws when he needed to. They didn't really need to do much. I think they went up 21-0 before half. So they were just kind of cruising along until the game was over. Jets are clearly the worst team in the NFL, and it's not even a question. But the best isn't as good as it has been in past years. And that could be a lot to do with crowd noise. It's something to keep track of. I can't wait to see the statistics between this COVID year and every other year in the last 3 years. It'll be interesting to see the numbers. But going into the afternoon games, the 1 of 2, which is kind of whack, was the Bucks demolishing the Packers 38-10 at home. Bucks 3-0 at home so far, which is something to take note of because I think they're one of the few teams that have fans. So I guess home field has some plays a part. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers didn't show up this game. They played well for a first quarter, but those two picks in the second were just the story of the game. He never bounced back afterwards. Tampa Bay's running game was unstoppable. Ronald Jones running for 113 and 2 touchdowns. Rob Gronkowski showing up from the grave. People thought it was over, but he showed up. He made a couple key catches. And yeah, like I said, the Bucks offense didn't have to really do anything. And if their defense can show up like this, no penalties, creating turnovers against a good quarterback, yeah, they can be for real. But like how people were after the Raiders beat the Chiefs, let's slow down. They showed up, but let's see how they do. Well, we can't just crown them because they beat a good team. I guess because they're undefeated, yes, but you have to see consistency. We haven't seen the Bucks do this all year, just like we didn't see the Raiders do what they did against the Chiefs all year. So we have to see if they can do this consistently. Because any team, as we can see, can have a terrible game in the Packers, and then Bucks can bounce back. We'll see. It's a week-to-week league. Everybody's off the Packers and on the Bucks right now, but we'll see. This is gonna be interesting. This is a Sunday night game. The afternoon game was the Jets and Dolphins and the Packers. Okay, Sunday night game, Niners, Rams. Niners won, surprisingly. I don't think it was because Jimmy G was back, but I don't want to take anything away from him. Jimmy G had a really good game, efficient, 23 for 33, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns. Was efficient, was very efficient. They had Mostert back. He's hurt again, so that's disappointing for that team. But they have so many running backs. They had that hasty guy come out of nowhere. It seems like they really live by that next man up. They're not as talented and as physical or as fast as Mostert, but they'll make do. They'll make do. It's their offensive line that I'm worried about as far as injuries. Rams were slowed down for the first time this year, which is surprising. But this is a divisional game. These teams know each other well. Let's not knock the Rams too much and hype up the Niners too much. This is a division game. They play out differently than regular games against their own conference or even interconferencely. So there's not too much to take away. Not to say that the Niners can't come back and the Rams are as good as, the projections before this. But it was interesting. I didn't expect the Niners to bounce back defensively. Like, you can tell that they were pissed off based off that Dolphins game that they had. We'll see if they can continue to do this. I don't see it from Jimmy G. They're clearly not as good on defense, and they're not any better on offense, though Brandon Ayuk was pretty good, and you already know how George Kittle is, and Devo's clearly back. I just don't think that they're enough to overtake the teams that are in the division, especially if the Cardinals can play as good defensively as they did on Monday night. Speaking of Monday night, first of those two games, Chiefs-Bills. Chiefs played like the Raiders. It was weird. They were running the ball the entire game. Patrick Mahomes, he didn't have a bad game. It just, he wasn't making the magical plays that he usually does, and he didn't need to. Hilaire, 26 for 161. Yeah, you don't need Patrick Mahomes' magic. You can save that for the next game. And I think that's what their mentality was. It's like, oh, you think that if you just play back, you're gonna beat us? Nah, we can grind out wins when we need to. We can play any. I think they were trying to flex that they can play any style that the defense presents to them, and that's exactly what they did. Their defense showed up pretty well against. I don't know whether it's to say that the Chiefs showed up and the Bills didn't, or is the Bills' offense not as good and the Chiefs just, matched up? I don't know. It's tough to say. I can see the argument for either side. It was a rainy game, So the fact that the Chiefs can get their running game going and the Bills' running game couldn't get going, I think was a key factor in this game. I don't think that the Bills' offense or Bills' defense is as bad as it looked, and I don't think the Chiefs' defense is as good as it looked. I don't know. It's weird. This is a tough game. This is why I put it as one of my intriguing games. I just didn't know how to feel about it because though I can see the Chiefs being able to do this, will they? Was this just a flex game that they were just like, oh, we can run it? But I don't see them running it much more. But then they are getting Le'Veon Bell, so why wouldn't you run the ball more? It's interesting. I want to see how the Chiefs come out after this game and if the Bills can get back to the form that they had the first 4 weeks. Were they an anomaly these first 4 weeks? Was it just, catching teams off guard? Now that they have film on them, they've kind of slowed down. We'll see. If they don't shape up offensively, their defense clearly isn't good enough to win them games, which will affect their division title hopes. It'll be interesting. They definitely could be a team that was a Cinderella, not a Cinderella, but hype after the first month and have completely turned the page for the worst these 2 games into the second quarter. And to close this out, we have the Cardinals dominating the Cowboys. Kyler Murray only completed 9 passes and got, I don't know how many touchdowns, I think 2 touchdowns, along with Kenyon Drake going off on the ground for the first time this year, having 164 yards and 2 TDs himself. Watching this game, people were saying that, there's going to be a small drop off between Dalton and Dak, but it was clear. It was clear that this team needed Dak. And I find that so funny because 2 years ago, or even like 2 years ago, everybody was saying that this offense is through Zeke. It's all Zeke. Dak is lucky to be part of this offense. And now look how the pages have turned. Zeke can't do anything. He can't carry the ball. They don't even trust him to carry the ball. He's fumbling all over the place. I just think it has to do with mentality and how this team chooses to utilize its talent. I don't know if Zeke is as good as he was his rookie year or his first 2 or 3 years. He's not showing it. I didn't know he had a fumbling problem like that. But he has fumbled in a couple of games that I've seen this year in the first half. Bad, but when you look at their offense, you assume that they're a throwing team considering the talent they have in the wideout. But they have to get something off the ground. They weren't getting anything. And it seemed like they were forcing to get the running game going. Even when they were down 14-21, they were still trying to get the running game going. And yes, I understand Zeke, but yes, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Gallup, Amari Cooper. I think it's tougher to get those guys going than it is to get Zeke going. But we'll see. Are the Cardinals as good as they were in the first 2 games and they're bouncing back to that? Or are they more closer to the last 2 games that we saw prior to this where they didn't show up and the teams were able to somewhat control Kyler? And this is against the Cowboys defense who haven't stopped anybody. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cardinals can do because I don't think that their defense is as good as they showed this week because they lost Chandler Jones for the year, which is very big for them. And they can't expect to blitz good teams like they did against the Cowboys and get away with it. You do that against Russell Wilson. You can do that against Aaron Rodgers. These good teams, against Tom Brady, these good teams, they're going to pick you apart. So we'll see how the Cardinals continue to get creative defensively because that's what's going to hold them back if they can't make the playoffs. Their offense is definitely good enough to score points. Can their defense stop anybody, not named the Cowboys and the Jets? So yeah, that concludes this episode of the Newman Hour, episode 6, recapping the games from week 6. I look forward to getting the next episode out this week. Let's hope I can do it, previewing the games for week 7. Yeah, I hope you guys are well, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.